Okay, let's paint. We are painting this beautiful heritage house from Singapore. Today you will find the reference image if you want to use one in the files. I have a railing yellow, quinacridone rose and ultramarine blue today for my three colors, and everything that I will mix out of them. Don't mind this fourth color on my palette, is accidental. I will start directly with the brush and the whole painting will be done directly with the brush. I will start with this tree and I'm gonna use yellow right away, just kind of dancing with the brush. I'm using a Chinese calligraphy brush, which you can do these crazy things easily. And then I will add blue right into the wet paint here in the same motions. Allowing it to mix directly on the paper. And just a tad of red to highlight the shadows. Just a few spaces. And the same red I will use for the branches. We'll let it spread a little bit around. So I don't have any sharp elements on the edge of the paper. As you know, I like to use flat brushes for architecture. My favorite brushes are unfortunately left back at home. I'm painting today from my studio, but we will have to just do with what we have. Actually, just checking what color I have here. I have phthalo green and I think I will use it after all to make this kind of turquoise. It's definitely not my favorite brush. This is Da Vinci Casaneo. Every brush takes time to get used to it. So actually blaming the brush is not quite correct. I'm mixing a gray out of all three colors. Just in the middle here. If it's too green, I add more red. If it's too red, I add more yellow and blue, and I mix, oops, accidents happen, and I mix it until I'm satisfied with the green that I get. With the gray, I mean. I'm actually happy with it to be a bit warmer, so I'm gonna use the same gray and dilute it with a bit of orange or yellow. What's with my language today? I'm working quickly because these things dry really quick. Taking advantage of the shape of the brush. This is mostly a demo. If you're expecting a tutorial, there are simpler tutorials on this Patreon, but this will not be it. This video will talk, or rather I will show how I approach my paintings, but this is not a step-by-step video. See how I use the shape of the brush to create triangular architectural details, and I'm going to continue. It's above the tree, really leaving an outline of the outline of white around. This allows me to create the right light effect around the tree. And I will spread the gray down so there is no hard shape to this shadow. It will be all part of the same facade. I'm changing slightly the shade of the gray now and then to create variety. Then I will add some extra shadows here and there into the corners, building on this the amount of pigment before it gets too dry, mostly around the tree, because that's where it's gonna be the darkest, because that's where the light hits the tree as well. We have our darkest darks, remember? We have our darkest darks where you have the lightest light. I can already use the blue. I'm not touching the areas that I already painted with the brush. Leaving the white area around for the same light effect. I'm using the same colors and the same mixes if I need to mix something into this blue. Create a bit brighter sky. Okay. There's about 10 seconds in watercolor before it gets too dry to touch. And for this 10 seconds you can actually correct things. Then from here I will mix my brown oranges by mixing red, yellow, and just a tiny bit of blue. To create a glowing orange. Well, let's wait for it to dry a little bit. I'll just start delineating this facade using the lines that they're kind of already clear, like this one, for example. I'll add color while it's wet, and then make sure that the tree is still in front of it. And again, I vary the shade, adding sometimes yellow, sometimes some other colors. Making sure that these columns around here are the same distance. Not forgetting the tree in front. Just removing this line quickly, because we'll have an open window in here. So if you were told that you can't fix watercolor, that is not true. If you're not using staining colors, you can work your mistakes out, but you have to do it really quickly. have some kind of orange green there, so I'm adding my orange mixture into that green. Transavia maybe a little bit, but it's part of watercolor, so we can't really avoid that. Again, I'm mixing dark gray out of all three colors. It's not going to be too dark because some of the colors, like the quinacridone rose, will not mix into a very dark shade. And I'm adding it into just some of the corners. This method of painting is very hard to make really precise. Hope you understand that. What's important in it that it trains you to think quickly and react quickly to what's going on your page. You can't have any distractions around you for this, because you will lose track of what you're doing, and that needs to be worked really quick. When it comes to the patterns, it's not important that you get the pattern precisely and look into all the details. It's important that you get the principle and the quality and the character of it. You don't have to copy it one to one. There you go. I'm using various kind of grays to roughly sketch out the main features of the facade without focusing too much on the precision. A lot of colors will float into each other and mix, which is completely fine. It will still keep the character of the subject, again without paying too much to its details. paying attention to the symmetry of the things, and again, rough character of the shapes without redrawing directly, without measuring exactly where they should be located. Rough proportions, not necessarily precise proportions. Not being afraid of colors. Varying the color for repeating elements a little bit so they don't end up to be too repetitive, adding graphic elements with the brush loosely as we go. A mixture of sketch and a painting. My paper is rough arch paper, so it requires quite a lot of water, otherwise you see the skid marks, which are completely fine if the texture is intended, like in my case, but not everywhere. For example, in the shadows, the texture, it's always a light shadow. Whatever is in the dark, in the shadow, cannot have any skid marks. Using the same grays to add shadows, just light shadows where there are none. Yellow color is the one that uses up the fastest anytime. So I go through a lot of Aurelian. This is my most used color that I have. I keep adding the darks carefully. Making sure these darks don't exist on the edges of the paper. Pushing them out slightly on these edges. So my studio is actually in a public space, and people, I'm like in a fish tank, you know, I have that glass and it's open to everyone who passes by, so people can see what I do. So as I record it, people literally walk by and peek into the windows. So I'm being kind of artistic monkey here, which is a new experience that, believe it or not, I signed up willingly for. I'm mixing a bit more reds into this mixture now because I'm switching to painting this window. And the window is green, so I'm mixing a bit of a opposite color, just slightly, to make that color pop. And then I will add a bit of blue here because there is some sky reflected. And also for variation, so my gray is not just boring gray. Making sure it's spread logically. Seeing if there is blue in here, then there is blue somewhere nearby, so it transcends. Add more water. And use it here as well. Darkening that opening down there. And adding more pigment while it's still wet. We need to mix really quickly. Sometimes right on the paper. Again, add in some shadows which are lighter than what we already have because they fall white and they're fairly soft. And I continue painting above. Again, making sure I don't have hard edges on the shadows, except where it meets the elements, like a column, where it needs to have a shape. A bit too bright, so I dampen the color a little bit, making it less bright with the opposite. And again, the color doesn't have to be precise, just as long as it kind of repeats the character. It's completely fine with me that it kind of washed out here because I don't want that tension on the edges. Again, mixing a bit of an opposite color into the red to make it a bit less red. This way, the bits, the paper that are drying, I work with them. The ones that are wet, sometimes I just leave them to dry. Sometimes I paint on top of it. A lot of it is accidental, but most of the process is possible only if you practice enough. I paint using the principle I see it. I paint it, my attention just jumps around like mad. That's why you don't see any structure in what I do, because there is literally no structure. I allow my ADHD mind to have that no structure so it can be free. And can be kept interested in what I'm doing. So each one of you will have to find a way that allows you to continue practice as much as you can and bounce back quickly from your mistakes. For me, it's this process that allows for dopamine to be produced, because it's spontaneous process helps me to keep me interested. For you, it might work the other way. For you, you might need a clearer structure in what you paint and more predictability. For me, I don't need predictability. I actually thrive on improvisation in my painting. I love it. I get a kick out of it. To sketch quickly and what's that called? Impulsively. That was the thing that kept me going for so many years. You have to find what keeps you going. And if you like my style and if you like my energy, there is a big chance that you're neurodivergent, and that this way will also will suit you, but maybe it doesn't, and you have to find out by trying as many ways of painting as you can. Only experimenting with different styles, different materials, different ways of painting will allow you to learn about yourself. But also by allowing yourself time to paint without supervision, without tips. For example, right now I feel that I need to create that vacuum again for myself, where I just paint without looking at any references, being inspired by anyone, because I need to find me again. Because I spent so much time learning from someone or doing something else, like the digital artwork that I did, that is so far away from who I am that I need to relearn what it means to be me again. You see, I'm not copying the photo. I'm using the elements, but I'm not copying precisely where they are necessarily. At this point, I'm adding details. A really great way to develop your hand-to-eye coordination is to copy fonts as well directly with the brush or with the pen without a pencil, without being able to erase it. Just take a brush and go for it. and we're done. If you'd like a homework, you can take a few photos, simple or complex, start with simple ones, and do this process. Make sure you do it several times. Before you make a decision not to do it anymore. The way I'm doing it was developed over years of practice. And the more you learn to do things repeatedly again and again, despite you not liking the outcome, is how you get comfortable with any process. Forget about the outcome, focus on the process itself, focus on the amazing feeling, that a state of flow in which you have to be in order to paint affects you and feels like focus on the process, because this is how you end up practicing more. Result doesn't matter. Produce as many bad paintings as you can. This is how you become any good at anything you do. And I'll see you next time.